everyone classified as a tree hugger, like wood elves or nature, like your aliens to be more natural and complicated, then the Weaver Courts might just be for you. In this series, I'll discuss the basics of the Conquest faction so you can decide if they're interesting enough to try them out. Let's start with a little bit of the lore. Distant cousins to the Spires, the Weaver Courts eschew the warping of their gifts to biomancy like the Spires did, and kept life binding. Life binding is the process of joining the life forces of two beings together, causing an unknowable result in terms of look and abilities, like doe eyes or tree bark. Broken into 4 courts, summer, spring, autumn, and winter, the diversity of the members in those is immense. Much like the actual seasons, the courts wax and wane. Their lands of Faerun have prospered in the current summer, but that will not always stay, nor will the peace. Subterfuge, betrayal, and ambition are not just Spire's traits, but also those of the Weavers. As they seek to spread out from the lands, the rest of AO will see what combining with nature has wrought. Now, the influences of this faction are obviously, say, nature, wood elves, whether or not you think of them from Warhammer or Tolkien or anything like that. Let's go a little bit over the army rules. So, big thing one, they ignore hindering terrain, all of them. So, essentially, you get your inspires when you go over the terrain, you get your impacts when you go over the terrain. Like I said, they are broken into those 4 courts we talked about, and units either follow the Warlord's court or they have their own particular court, and they might get rules depending on which season it's currently in. What's going to happen is you are going to start in whatever the Warlord's season is for round 1, and then it's going to go through the cycle spring, summer, autumn, winter, and back around. And depending on what season you are, some units might be better or not work quite as well. One thing you do get, though, is that if the regiment is the same season as a warlord, and it's the correct season, then they get +1 to their move. So about every 4 turns, depending on what you take, maybe a good amount of your army actually gets a little bit faster. You have attacks. Of course, when you do an attack, as long as you get a hit, whether it's in close combat or shooting, you put a seed marker on someone. They can hold up the 2 seed markers. If at the start of the round someone has 2 seed markers on them, then it blooms. And depending on the season that you're in at that time, you get a variety of different effects. It can be things like making it harder for your opponent. Maybe they have to roll more dice and take the lowest to charge. Or it could help you. Could give you bonuses to charge, or maybe shock, which means that you just have better clash values. So they do a different variety of different effects. Let's talk a little bit about the playstyle then. So it's a little bit tough to do accurately for the moment because we're waiting on a variety of units still. They have a good amount out, and depending on when you're listening to this, this is being recorded in February. If you're after that, you might have most of the stuff, but we're going to see what happens when they get the rest of it. So we'll talk about it for what they have right now. They're generally not a very defensive or wounds-heavy army, except in very specific units. Your Cron Guardians, essentially your trees, a good amount of wounds, good defense, but a lot of your other units tend to be very low defense, usually defense 2, evade 2, or if they have evade, a lot of times they're almost the same sort of number, and your wounds are reasonably low. You even have one of your brute units that has 4 wounds each. Actually, I think you might even have more than one, thinking about it, but I'm thinking of the Skylia Dancers. So survivability is mostly not your thing. What I find for them right now is they have that sort of glass cannon feel, but they don't necessarily feel like they have the cannon everywhere. Much like, so this is sort of your elves faction. And much like elves in at least GW games or a variety of other ones, your units are very specialized. They have a role, and they are good at their role, or maybe great at their role, or maybe okay at their role. But they're generally very not good at most other things. Your Cron Guardians are a good unit to get in someone's face and can sit there reasonably well. Again, if someone has all kinds of crazy rules themselves, that's another case. But they're pretty good at standing there and tanking the hits. Where some of your units, no, don't let them get hit. Timing for this army is very important because, as we talked about, that your attacks put these markers on units. And one, if you have those 2 seeds at the beginning of a round, then boom, you get a bloom effect, and you could be giving a good bonus one way or the other. Or a good bonus for you, I should say, and a detriment to your opponent. The other thing with that, though, is some units will actually spend them almost like a currency. The classical warriors, which aren't out right now, they can actually spend them within a certain range to get more cleave, so to get through people's armor and all. The spells that your caster has, the Senahosity, depend on mostly having seeds or bloom effects on people. So timing, more than a lot of armies, really here matters. What that means is I might want to do this thing first, but it will be less effective because I want to do these other multiple things first. So I would like to go hit you with this unit because I won the initiative and it gives me a good position, and I'll hit you before you can do that damage to me. But I'm kind of nerfed by the fact that I don't have the seed markers on you, which I want for this ability or this other thing. So timing is a little bit tough. They are an army of synergy and overdrive. You are doing this piece with this unit here to cast a spell here to buff this other unit before this one charges, and so on. They have a lot of opportunists, so hitting people in flanks and rears gets a lot of reroll. They also have a lot of aimed shots, so they have a lot of ability to move and still shoot the units that can at good effect, including some of your moths. Talk about those strengths. We said the synergy and area manipulation. So, as they have great models and theming, except for that synergy. Yeah, you have a lot of your pieces wanting to fit together well. And that area manipulation, you have a lot of speed, you have a lot of flying. So flying means you can just go over other units. So it's a lot harder for people to either block you out or you get to where you want. So you can easily position for those opportunists and all like that. Is that we mentioned those great models in theming, and the models are really nice. And they have options for not being seen outside of 8 inches for several units. So you have ways to manipulate what your opponent can do to you. You're ignoring the terrain that is a big hindrance to you. Maybe they can't even see you. So you have a lot of nice tools. The weakness, though, is that if you make a mistake or you give several, like say your opponent gives you several bad options, that you could start to collapse pretty quick. Like I said, you don't have a lot of survivability in a lot of these units. You don't necessarily have tons of wounds in these units. On their own, most units aren't going to be destroying opponents' units. You usually need to come in mass, or at least a few different ones. So if you're going to be piecemealed a little bit, you might have a little bit of an issue. You kind of do need to have multiple things around for support. Like I said, the timing with the seeds is rough. You might want to delay an attack to get a bonus, but you might not be able to because maybe you're not there if you don't do the attack now. Like I said, and a lot of not great saves. So like some other factions, like Nords, you have to be careful with how and what you engage. Like I said, very specialized units. They have their task, but if you misapply them, it'll be a little bit tough. That's why for these guys, I give them a 5 out of 5 for difficulty. They are a very difficult army, I think. I think if you like them and you like the theme, go for it. I think you will have fun. However, I think you're probably, if you're playing against people who know what they're doing, I think you're going to lose a lot of games to start with. All right, so how would you start? Obviously, the one-player starter is a great way unless you're going for the giant full force. Either way, though, do have a discount code in the show notes below to help you out. I would go with this. It's good. It gives you a character, gives you Cron Guardians. I like moths are great. I run 2 units. If I'm running 1 unit, I'd probably go with the Seaneer. If I'm running the other unit, I would go with the however you pronounce. I can't remember the Scathia. The pronunciations also for this are tough. I have a little guide up, and they actually did provide it as well, which is nice. And the bows, honestly, you kind of do need bows, whether or not you like them. I do like them, but you need them because that's a way to get seeds onto people from range, and that really helps out. And there's some tricks to get like 1 seed that becomes 2, which blooms immediately, and all those sort of effects. Where would I expand from here? I would get another unit of moths. I personally expanded with another starter because I wanted 2 units of Cron Guardians. I wanted both characters, and I wanted more moths. And at that price, that's pretty much getting those other units for reasonably cheap or almost free. And having at least 1 more stand of current skirmishers was useful to me. Where would I go from there? So from there, I'm looking at probably one of the Drakes. Coil Draga is probably better because a character can go on it, and it's a great way to put a character. Absolutely very strong. If you are liking the look of Winter, go with your Gevra Knights, your Moose. You need a Sahasi right now to do that, but that gives you your Spellcaster. Spellcaster can go in those Moose. There's a way to do that. I think that's a great option, and they're absolutely an awesome looking model. Once more units drop, then I'm looking at probably like the Glasgow Warriors or something like that. And whenever that monster comes out, the monster. But right now, what I would expand to, I would probably pick up some Knights, big old monster, and the character for it. That gives us a brief overview of this. So if you enjoy a more nature-themed army with a strong puzzle to solve, then maybe Weaver Courts are for you.